The city never truly slept, but from the top floor of the Golden Crest Hotel, it looked like it did. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of her penthouse office, Eleanor Vance watched the night stretch endlessly across the city. Streetlights blinked like scattered stars, traffic crawled like glowing ants, and somewhere far below, life continued in ways that had nothing to do with her. She liked it that way sometimes, being removed, in control, untouchable. But tonight something felt off. Eleanor stood still, one hand resting against the glass, her reflection staring back at her. The city lights outlined her figure, the fullness of her body, the soft curve of her arms, the presence she carried even in silence. People saw her size before they saw her. They always had. She exhaled slowly and turned away from the window, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble floor. The office behind her was nothing short of perfection. Minimalist, expensive, deliberate. Everything had its place. Just like her life. Or at least that was what the world believed. Her desk buzzed faintly. She walked over and picked up the tablet, scanning the latest financial reports. Her eyes moved quickly, trained by years of discipline and experience. Revenue down, customer satisfaction declining, maintenance costs suspiciously high. Eleanor frowned. That did not make sense. The Golden Crest Hotel was not just a business. It was her legacy. Every detail, from the scent in the lobby to the thread count of the bedsheets, had been carefully curated. She did not build this empire by overlooking details. So why did something feel wrong? She tapped the screen, pulling up another report, then another and another. The numbers told a story, but it was not a clean one. It was messy, inconsistent, slippery. Like someone was trying very hard to hide something. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she said, her voice calm but firm. The door opened gently, and her personal assistant Tara stepped in, neatly dressed, efficient as always. "Ma'am, your evening call has been rescheduled." Eleanor nodded absently, still looking at the tablet. "Thank you, Tara." Tara hesitated. It was subtle, but Eleanor noticed everything. "What is it?" Eleanor asked without looking up. Tara shifted slightly. "There have been complaints, Ma." Now Eleanor looked up. "Complaints?" "Yes, Ma." "From guests at the main branch." Eleanor's expression did not change, but something in her eyes sharpened. "What kind of complaints?" Tara swallowed lightly. "Rude staff, poor service, delayed responses. Some guests said they felt disrespected." Silence filled the room, heavy, controlled. Eleanor placed the tablet down slowly. "That is not possible." Tara did not respond, because they both knew anything was possible. Eleanor straightened. "Have these complaints been escalated before now?" Tara nodded. "Yes, Ma. They were handled by the branch manager." "Handled?" Eleanor repeated softly. "But not solved." Eleanor turned away, walking back toward the window. This time the city did not look peaceful. It looked distant, disconnected. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. "A few months, Ma." A few months, and she had not known. Eleanor's jaw tightened slightly. That was the problem with success. The bigger your empire became, the harder it was to see everything. You had to trust people, and trust could be dangerous. "Send me all reports from that branch," Eleanor said. "Every complaint, every financial record, everything." "Yes, Ma." Tara turned to leave, then paused again. Eleanor did not turn this time. "Say it." "I think," Tara hesitated, "I think you should visit the hotel yourself." Eleanor finally looked back at her. There it was, the unspoken truth. "You think I have been away too long," Eleanor said. Tara lowered her gaze respectfully. I think, Ma, people behave differently when they know you are watching. A small, humorless smile touched Eleanor's lips. And when they think I am not? Tara did not answer. She did not have to. After Tara left, the office felt larger, quieter. Eleanor walked back to her desk and sat down slowly. For a long moment she did nothing. Then she opened a drawer and pulled out an old photograph. It was slightly worn at the edges, a rare imperfection in her otherwise perfect world. In the picture, a younger Eleanor stood in front of a much smaller building. No luxury, no grandeur, just a modest structure with a hand-painted sign, Golden Crest. The beginning. Back then, she had done everything herself. Receptionist, cleaner, manager, even security when needed. She remembered the long nights, the exhaustion, the way people had looked at her, dismissing her, underestimating her. A woman like you, they would say, you want to run a hotel? She had smiled through it, and then she had proven them wrong every single time. Eleanor traced her finger lightly over the photo. Back then, she knew everything that happened within those walls. Every guest, every staff member, every problem. Now she owned dozens of hotels, and somehow she knew less. That realization sat heavy in her chest. She placed the photo back in the drawer and leaned back in her chair. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened screen of her tablet. Powerful, respected, alone. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. When was the last time someone had spoken to her without calculation, without fear, without wanting something? She could not remember. Even her staff treated her like something fragile and distant, like she might break, or worse, like she might judge them. And maybe she did, but not without reason, because she knew what people were capable of. She had seen it, lived it, fought through it, which was exactly why this bothered her so much. If something was wrong in her hotel, she would find it, not through reports, not through filtered meetings, but with her own eyes. She stood in front of a mirror in a modest apartment across town. The transformation was almost complete. Her usual tailored dresses were gone, replaced with a loose, slightly faded security uniform. The fabric did not flatter her body. It was not meant to. Her hair was tucked neatly under a cap, her face bare. No makeup, no jewelry, no trace of the woman who owned an empire. She adjusted the cap slightly, studying herself. For a moment, she did not recognize the person staring back at her, and that was the point. Eleanor Vance, the billionaire, would not be visiting her hotel. Instead, a new employee would be starting work today. A security guard. Invisible, unimportant, overlooked. Perfect. A small knock came at the door. Ma? Tara stopped herself and corrected quickly. Everything is ready. Eleanor nodded. Good. Tara hesitated again, clearly unsure. Are you certain about this? She asked. Eleanor picked up a small identification badge from the table. It read, Eleanor, Security. She pinned it onto her uniform. I built this company from nothing, she said calmly. If something is wrong, I will not sit in an office and guess. Tara looked at her with a mix of admiration and concern. But what if they recognize you? Eleanor smiled slightly. They will not. There was no arrogance in her tone, just certainty, because people rarely looked beyond what they expected to see, and no one expected to see a billionaire in a security uniform. As Eleanor stepped out of the apartment and into the morning air, something shifted inside her. It had been a long time since she walked into the world without protection, without status, without being Eleanor Vance. This time, she was just another worker, and for the first time in years, she was about to see the truth. Unfiltered, unpolished, uncomfortable. She inhaled deeply, then stepped forward toward the hotel, toward whatever waited for her inside, and toward a truth that would change everything. The Golden Crest Hotel stood tall and radiant under the early morning sun, its glass exterior reflecting the city like a polished mirror. Eleanor paused across the street. For a brief moment, she simply stared. This was hers. Every beam, every tile, every shimmering window. She remembered when the land had been nothing but dust and stubborn weeds. When people laughed at her for daring to build something too big for a woman like her. Now look at it. Luxury cars rolled into the driveway one after another. Well-dressed guests stepped out, greeted instantly by uniformed staff with perfectly rehearsed smiles. Everything looked flawless, but Eleanor knew better. Appearances could lie, and today she intended to peel that lie apart. She adjusted her oversized security jacket, tugging it slightly lower to conceal the natural confidence in her posture. She softened her expression, allowing a hint of uncertainty to settle into her eyes. Invisible, that was the goal. She crossed the street. Each step toward the entrance felt heavier than it should have. Not because she was afraid, but because she was stepping into a version of her world where she held no power, no recognition, no authority, just observation. As she approached the staff entrance at the side of the building, she noticed something immediately. Two workers stood by the door, chatting casually. One of them glanced at her briefly, then looked away without greeting. No acknowledgement, no professionalism. Eleanor said nothing. She simply noted it. The staff entrance door creaked slightly as she pushed it open. Inside, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Gone was the polished elegance of the lobby. Here the walls were plain, functional, slightly worn. This was where the real hotel lived. A narrow hallway stretched ahead, filled with hurried footsteps, muffled conversations, and the faint clatter of equipment. Eleanor walked in quietly. No one stopped her. No one asked who she was. Another note. She followed the signs toward the staff administrative office where new employees were expected to check in. Inside, a young woman sat behind a desk, scrolling through her phone. Eleanor stood there for a moment, waiting. The woman did not look up. "Good morning," Eleanor said politely. The woman sighed softly before lifting her gaze, clearly irritated at being interrupted. "What do you want?" she asked flatly. Eleanor held her expression steady. "I am the new security staff. I was told to report here." The woman glanced at her from head to toe, her lips curling slightly. "Security?" she repeated, unimpressed. Eleanor nodded. The woman leaned back in her chair, still looking at her phone. "Name?" "Eleanor?" The woman typed lazily into the computer. "ID?" Eleanor handed over the badge. The woman took it, barely glancing at it before placing it on the desk. "Sit over there," she said, gesturing vaguely to a plastic chair in the corner. No explanation, no welcome, just dismissal. Eleanor walked over and sat down quietly. Inside, however, her mind was already working. This was the first impression given to new staff. Cold, dismissive, unprofessional, completely unacceptable. She folded her hands in her lap and waited. Minutes passed, then more minutes. Staff walked in and out of the office, some laughing, some complaining, none paying attention to her. At one point, 2 employees walked past her. "Another one?" one of them muttered under her breath. "They do not last anyway," the other replied with a shrug. Eleanor kept her gaze forward, but she heard everything. Finally, after what felt like nearly an hour, the woman at the desk called out without looking up. "Eleanor." Eleanor stood immediately and approached the desk. "You will report to Mr. Hargrove," the woman said, the branch manager. There was a slight shift in her tone when she said his name, something between fear and forced respect. "He will assign your duties." "Thank you," Eleanor replied. The woman did not respond. Mr. Hargrove's office was on the 2nd floor. As Eleanor made her way there, she passed through a section of the hotel that transitioned between staff-only areas and guest spaces. The difference was jarring. One side, luxury, smiles, warmth. The other, tension, indifference, exhaustion. Eleanor slowed her steps. This contrast was not accidental, it was cultural, and culture started from the top. She reached the manager's office and knocked. "Come in," a sharp voice called. Eleanor entered. Mr. Hargrove sat behind a large desk, flipping through documents. He did not look up immediately. "Make it quick," he said. "I am busy." Eleanor stepped forward slightly. "Good morning, sir. I am the new security." He raised a hand, cutting her off, still not looking at her. "Name?" "Eleanor." Now he looked up. His eyes scanned her briefly. There was no warmth in them, only calculation and mild disdain. "You are late," he said. Eleanor blinked slightly. "Sir, I was told to report." "I said you are late," he repeated, his voice firmer. Silence. Eleanor lowered her gaze slightly. "I apologize, sir." He leaned back in his chair. "You people always have excuses," he muttered. "That is the problem. You people." Eleanor felt the words settle uncomfortably in her chest, but she said nothing. "Listen carefully," he continued. "This is not a charity organization. If you cannot do the job, you will be replaced. Simple." "Yes, sir?" "You will be stationed at the main entrance. Stand, observe, do not talk unless necessary, and do not cause problems." "Yes, sir." He waved his hand dismissively. "Go." That was it. No orientation, no briefing, no professionalism. Eleanor turned and walked out. Her steps were calm, measured, but inside something was beginning to shift. This man was running her hotel. The main entrance was exactly as she remembered it. Grand, impressive, intimidating. Guests walked in and out, greeted by uniformed staff whose smiles looked perfect from a distance. Eleanor took her position near the entrance, standing, watching, learning. First, everything seemed normal. Doors opened, guests were welcomed. Luggage was carried. But the longer she stood there, the more she began to notice the cracks. A guest approached the front desk with a complaint. The receptionist smiled politely, but the moment the guest turned away, her expression dropped instantly. "Some people are just annoying," she muttered to a colleague. Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly. A cleaner walked past, pushing a cart. She looked exhausted. As she paused briefly to adjust something, another staff member snapped at her. "Why are you standing? Move!" The cleaner nodded quickly and hurried away. No respect, no empathy, just pressure. Eleanor's grip tightened slightly at her sides. This was not how she built her company, not even close. Hours passed, no one spoke to her, no one acknowledged her. To them, she was just there. Fixture, invisible. At one point, two well-dressed guests walked past her. One of them glanced at her and chuckled quietly. "They really hire anyone these days," he whispered. His companion laughed. Eleanor kept her face neutral, but the words lingered. She had heard things like that before, years ago, before the money, before the success. It should not have bothered her anymore, but somehow it did. By midday, the heat had intensified. Even under the shade of the entrance, Eleanor could feel it pressing against her skin. Her feet ached, her back strained. She shifted slightly but remembered the manager's instruction. Stand, observe, no complaints. So she remained still and she kept watching. That was when she noticed something else. Patterns. Certain staff members seemed overly relaxed, laughing, taking extended breaks, ignoring responsibilities. Others worked twice as hard, unbalanced, unfair, and no one seemed to care. Eleanor's mind began to connect the dots. Poor management, lack of accountability, a culture of fear for some, and freedom for others. This was not just a few bad attitudes, this was systemic. And it was rotting her business from the inside. As the day stretched on, fatigue settled deep into her bones, but she welcomed it, because for the first time in years, she was experiencing her company from the ground level again. Not as a boss, but as a worker, and the truth was uncomfortable. By the time her shift ended, the sun had begun to dip. The golden glow of evening reflected off the hotel's glass walls, making it look as perfect as ever. But Eleanor knew better now. Perfection was an illusion. She stepped away from the entrance slowly, her body heavy, but her mind sharper than ever. This was only the beginning, and already she had seen enough to know one thing for certain. Something was deeply wrong inside the Golden Crest Hotel, and she was going to uncover every single piece of it, no matter what it took. As she pushed open the staff door again, she paid closer attention than before. The same two workers were there again, laughing, relaxed. One of them glanced at her briefly. This time he smirked. "Ah, new security," he said, his tone laced with amusement. "You survived yesterday?" The other chuckled. "Let us see how long she lasts." Eleanor forced a small, polite smile. "I will do my best," she replied. They laughed again, not kindly, mocking, and just like that they turned back to their conversation, dismissing her as if she did not matter. Eleanor walked past them. Inside, her thoughts were sharper now. This was not just poor professionalism. This was culture. A culture where respect was not given, it was ranked. And those at the bottom were expected to endure. The hallway buzzed with early morning energy. Staff hurried in different directions, preparing for the day ahead. But beneath the movement, Eleanor sensed something else. Tension. Like everyone was bracing for something or someone. She did not have to wait long to find out. "Why is this place not ready yet?" The voice cut through the corridor like a whip. Sharp, angry, commanding. "Mr. Hargrove." Eleanor slowed her steps slightly, turning her head just enough to see without drawing attention. He stood near a group of cleaners, his face twisted with irritation. "I gave instructions yesterday," he barked. "Or do you people not understand simple English?" A young woman stood in front of him, her head bowed. "I am sorry, sir," she said softly. "We were short-staffed and—" "Excuses," he snapped. The word echoed. Eleanor's stomach tightened. "I do not want excuses," he continued. "I want results. If you cannot do your job, I will find someone who can." The girl nodded quickly. "I understand, sir." "Do you?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping, but somehow becoming even more threatening. "Because from where I stand, it does not look like you do." Eleanor felt her fingers curl slightly at her sides. This was not correction. This was humiliation, public, deliberate, unnecessary. The girl swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." "Good," he said coldly. "Now fix it." He turned sharply and walked away, not sparing her another glance. The girl remained still for a moment. Then she exhaled shakily and bent down to continue her work. Eleanor stood there watching. Something inside her cracked, just slightly. She had managed people before, corrected mistakes, handled inefficiency, but never like this, never with cruelty, never with the intention to belittle. She turned away slowly. This was not leadership. At the main lobby, the performance began again. Smiles, greetings, polished voices. "Welcome to Golden Crest Hotel." It was almost impressive how quickly people could switch masks. Eleanor took her position near the entrance, her eyes scanning everything. Today she was not just observing actions. She was reading behavior, tone, body language, truth. A middle-aged couple approached the front desk. The woman looked frustrated. "We have been waiting for over 30 minutes," she said. "Our room is not ready." The receptionist smiled brightly. "I am so sorry for the inconvenience, ma'am," she said sweetly. "We will have that sorted immediately." Her tone was perfect, her expression flawless. But Eleanor noticed it, the slight tightening around her eyes, the impatience beneath the surface. The couple stepped aside, and just like yesterday, the moment they turned away, the smile disappeared. "People can be so dramatic," the receptionist muttered under her breath. Her colleague snorted. "Seriously, it is not like they are the only guests here." Eleanor felt a slow burn rise in her chest. This was not just unprofessional, it was dangerous, because disrespect had a way of showing itself eventually, no matter how well it was hidden. By mid-morning, the lobby grew busier. Guests checking in, others leaving, luggage rolling across polished floors. And in the middle of it all, workers trying to keep up. Some succeeded, others struggled. Eleanor noticed one of the cleaners again, the same young woman from earlier. Her movements were quick, almost frantic, as if she was trying to make up for something or avoid something. She pushed her cart carefully across the floor, stopping occasionally to wipe surfaces and adjust items. At one point she paused briefly, pressing her hand against her lower back just for a second, but it was enough. "Hey." The sharp voice came again. The girl flinched instantly. "Mr. Hargrove, why are you standing there?" he demanded. "I was just," she began. "I do not pay you to rest," he interrupted. Eleanor's jaw tightened. The girl nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir." She resumed her work immediately. Her movements even faster now, fear-driven. Eleanor looked away, because if she did not, she might forget her role, and that would ruin everything. Time moved slowly, painfully. Each interaction Eleanor witnessed added another layer to the truth she was uncovering. This hotel was not failing because of external factors. It was failing from within. Poor leadership, toxic behavior, lack of accountability, and beneath it all, a system that allowed the wrong people to thrive. Around noon, something small but significant happened. A young bellboy accidentally dropped a guest's suitcase. It was not dramatic, it did not break. But the sound drew attention. The boy froze, panic flashing across his face. "I'm so sorry, sir," he said quickly, picking it up. The guest frowned slightly but said nothing. Unfortunately, someone else had seen it. Unbelievable. Mr. Hargrove again. He approached, his expression dark. "You cannot even carry luggage properly?" he snapped. The boy's hands trembled. "I am sorry, sir. It slipped." "Of course it slipped," the manager cut in, "because you are careless." Eleanor stepped slightly closer, her attention locked on the scene. "I will be more careful, sir," the boy said. "You will not need to be," Hargrove replied coldly, "because if this happens again, you are gone." The boy nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." Hargrove turned and walked away, just like that. No guidance, no understanding, only fear. Eleanor exhaled slowly. Another crack, deeper this time. Around noon, something small but significant happened. A young bellboy accidentally dropped a guest's suitcase. It was not dramatic, it did not break. But the sound drew attention. The boy froze, panic flashing across his face. "I'm so sorry, sir," he said quickly, picking it up. The guest frowned slightly but said nothing. Unfortunately, someone else had seen it. "Unbelievable." Mr. Hargrove again. He approached, his expression dark. "You cannot even carry luggage properly," he snapped. The boy's hands trembled. "I am sorry, sir. It slipped." "Of course it slipped," the manager cut in, "because you are careless." Eleanor stepped slightly closer, her attention locked on the scene. "I will be more careful, sir," the boy said. "You will not need to be," Hargrove replied coldly, "because if this happens again, you are gone." The boy nodded quickly. Yes, sir. Hargrove turned and walked away, just like that. No guidance, no understanding, only fear. Eleanor exhaled slowly. Another crack, deeper this time. By the time the afternoon arrived, Eleanor's understanding had shifted completely. Yesterday she had suspected problems. Today she was witnessing damage, real damage. The kind that did not show up immediately in reports but spread quietly, infecting everything: morale, service, trust, and most importantly, people. She looked around the lobby again, at the smiles, the uniforms, the illusion. And for the first time she felt something unexpected, not anger, not yet, something heavier, disappointment. Because this place, this hotel, was supposed to be different. As her shift neared its end, Eleanor adjusted her stance slightly, ignoring the ache in her legs. Her eyes moved across the room one last time. And that was when she realized something important. The cracks were not isolated, they were connected. And at the center of it all was management, Mr. Hargrove. Eleanor's gaze hardened slightly. She had seen enough to know one thing: this was not coincidence. This was control. And if she wanted to understand how deep this went, she would have to go further, look closer, stay longer. Because whatever was happening inside her hotel, it was only just beginning to reveal itself, and she was not going to stop until she uncovered every last piece of it. Eleanor's body had begun to understand something her mind was still processing. This was not an easy life. Standing for hours, watching everything, saying nothing, being ignored. It was exhausting in a way money could never fix. The uniform clung to her skin under the growing heat of the day, and her legs felt heavier than they had in years. Not because she was incapable, but because she had spent so long in a world where she did not have to endure this kind of strain anymore. Now she understood why some of her staff looked permanently tired, why their smiles sometimes felt forced, why patience ran thin. But understanding did not excuse what she had seen. It only made her more determined. The morning crowd had already begun to build when Eleanor took her position at the entrance. Guests moved in waves, some polite, some impatient, some completely indifferent. Staff rushed back and forth trying to maintain the illusion of perfection, and somewhere within all of it she stood, still, invisible. By now she had grown used to it. No greetings, no conversations, just passing glances, if that. To them, she was not Eleanor Vance. She was just security, and not even the kind people respected. Around mid-morning, the heat began to rise, even under the hotel's covered entrance. The air felt thick. Eleanor shifted slightly, trying to ease the strain in her lower back. A small movement, barely noticeable, but her body felt it. She exhaled slowly. You chose this, she reminded herself, and she would see it through. Good morning. The voice was gentle, warm, and unfamiliar. Eleanor turned slightly. A young man stood beside her holding a neatly arranged luggage cart. He was dressed in the hotel's standard uniform, but unlike many others, she had observed his appearance carried something different: care. His uniform was clean, properly fitted, his posture upright but not stiff. His expression open, not forced, not rehearsed, just real. Good morning, Eleanor replied, a little surprised. Most people did not bother. He smiled. You are new, right? She nodded. Yes. I thought so, he said lightly. I have not seen you around before. There was no judgment in his tone, no hidden mockery, just simple observation. I am Sawyer Reed, he added, extending his hand slightly. Eleanor hesitated for the briefest second, then shook it. Eleanor. His handshake was firm, respectful, not dismissive, not overpowering, just right. Well, welcome, he said. And somehow those two words felt different coming from him. Real. A car pulled up to the entrance and Sawyer moved quickly into action. He opened the door smoothly, greeting the guests with a natural ease that did not feel forced. "Welcome to Golden Crest Hotel, sir." "Ma'am?" He helped them out, handled their luggage with care, and guided them inside. Eleanor watched him closely, not just what he did, but how he did it. There was no rush in his movements, yet he worked efficiently. No irritation in his tone, even when the guests spoke sharply. No pretense, just professionalism. And kindness. It stood out immediately because it was rare. A few minutes later, Sawyer returned. He glanced at Eleanor briefly. "You have been standing here since morning?" "Yes," she replied. He frowned slightly. "That is a long time." Eleanor gave a small shrug. "It is part of the job." "Still," he said, looking around briefly, "you should rest when you can." She almost smiled. "Rest in this place?" Before she could respond, another car arrived and Sawyer stepped forward again. But this time Eleanor noticed something else. Even when he was busy, he remained aware, present, attentive, not just to guests, but to people. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher. The heat deepened. Eleanor's legs began to ache more noticeably now. Her back tightened. Her feet burned slightly inside her shoes. Still, she remained standing because that was what she had been told to do, and she would not break her cover. By early afternoon, the strain was undeniable. Eleanor shifted again, more carefully this time. Her hand briefly pressed against her lower back. A small wince escaped before she could stop it. "Hey!" Sawyer's voice again. She turned. He was standing closer now, his expression slightly concerned. "You okay?" "I am fine," she said quickly. He did not look convinced. "You do not look fine." Eleanor hesitated. No one had asked her that since she arrived. No one had noticed. "I am just a little tired," she admitted. Sawyer nodded slowly. "That makes sense." He glanced around, then stepped slightly closer, lowering his voice. "Wait here." Before she could respond, he walked off. Eleanor watched him go, confused. A few minutes later, he returned with a chair. Not one of the fancy ones from the lobby, just a simple plastic chair from a nearby staff area. But to Eleanor, it looked like relief. "Here," he said, placing it discreetly near her position. "Sit for a bit." Eleanor blinked. "I cannot," she said instinctively. "We were told to stand." Sawyer shrugged lightly. "You have been standing for hours. Sitting for 5 minutes will not collapse the hotel." There was a quiet humor in his tone. Eleanor almost laughed. Almost. "I do not want to get into trouble," she said. Sawyer leaned slightly closer. "I will keep an eye out," he said. "If the manager comes, I will signal you." Eleanor studied him. There it was again, that ease, that kindness, not forced, not strategic, just natural. "Thank you," she said softly. She sat down and the relief was immediate. Her body exhaled in a way her mind had not allowed it to before. Sawyer smiled slightly, then stepped back. "See? Not so bad." For the next few minutes, something shifted. Eleanor was not just observing anymore. She was experiencing something she had not expected to find here. Care. Not from management, not from policy, but from a person. And it mattered more than she realized. As the afternoon slowed slightly, Sawyer returned again, this time holding a small bottle of water. "You should drink," he said, handing it to her. Eleanor looked at it, then at him. "You did not have to do that." "I know," he replied simply. That answer stayed with her. They spoke more after that. Short conversations at first, between tasks, between moments. But each exchange revealed something more. Sawyer was not just kind, he was grounded. He spoke about work without bitterness, about guests without judgment, about life with a quiet resilience that Eleanor found refreshing. "Why do you do this?" she asked at one point. He tilted his head slightly. Do what? Be kind, she said, even when others are not. Sawyer thought about it for a moment, then he shrugged lightly. Because I know what it feels like when no one is. Eleanor felt that deeply. Later she watched him again, this time from a distance. A guest spoke harshly to him, unnecessarily impatient, rude. Sawyer did not react. He listened, nodded, responded calmly, resolved the issue, and moved on. No anger, no retaliation, just grace. Eleanor shook her head slightly. This one is different, she thought. As the sun began to dip, casting a warm glow across the hotel's entrance, Eleanor realized something she had not expected. The day had not felt as heavy, not because the environment had improved. It had not, but because within it, she had found a small pocket of light. Sawyer. When her shift finally ended, she stood slowly, stretching slightly. Her body still ached, but her mind felt clearer. As she prepared to leave, Sawyer approached one last time. Heading out? He asked. Yes. He nodded. Take care, Eleanor. There was something in the way he said her name, simple but genuine. You too, she replied. She paused, then added softly, Thank you for today. Sawyer smiled. Any time. As Eleanor walked away from the hotel, the evening air brushing gently against her skin, her thoughts were quieter than they had been in days. She had seen cruelty, disrespect, failure, but today she had also seen something else, something rare, something real, kindness. And somehow that made everything more complicated. Because now this was not just about fixing a broken system, it was about protecting the few good people still standing within it. And as Eleanor stepped into the fading light, one thought settled firmly in her mind. She would not let this place break him, not Sawyer, not the kind one. Eleanor no longer felt like a visitor in her own hotel. She felt like a witness. And what she was witnessing was no longer just discomfort or poor leadership. It was something darker, something intentional. The day had been long, longer than the others, not because of the workload, but because Eleanor's mind refused to rest. Every interaction now felt like a clue, every careless word, a thread. And she was beginning to pull them together. Mr. Hargrove's behavior was not just harsh, it was calculated, selective. Certain staff were constantly pressured, watched, and threatened. Others seemed untouchable, free to move lazily, free to ignore rules, free to disappear for long stretches without consequence. That imbalance was not accidental. It was controlled. And Eleanor knew one thing from experience. When control is uneven, something is being protected. By evening, the hotel began to quiet, not completely. Luxury never truly slept. But the pace softened. Guests settled into their rooms. The lobby thinned. The noise faded into a low hum of distant conversations and soft footsteps. Eleanor remained at her post. Her shift was nearly over. Her body ached. Her feet throbbed. But her mind was sharp, restless, watching, waiting. Long day. Sawyer's voice came softly from beside her. Eleanor turned slightly. Yes, she admitted. He nodded, leaning casually against the wall for a brief moment. You get used to it, he said. She raised an eyebrow slightly. Do you? He smiled faintly. No, he said honestly. You just learn how to endure it better. Eleanor almost laughed. There it was again, his honesty, unfiltered. How long have you worked here? She asked. 3 years, he replied. 3 years. Eleanor felt a quiet surprise. And it has always been like this? Sawyer hesitated. That alone told her enough. It did not start this way, he said carefully. Eleanor's attention sharpened. What changed? Sawyer glanced around briefly, lowering his voice. Management, he said simply. Of course. Eleanor's jaw tightened slightly. Before she could ask more, a guest approached, and Sawyer straightened immediately, returning to his duties. But his words lingered. It did not start this way. That meant something had shifted, something recent, and Eleanor intended to find out exactly what. By the time her shift officially ended, the sky had darkened. The hotel lights glowed warmly against the night, creating the illusion of comfort and protection once again. Eleanor did not leave immediately. Instead, she lingered, quietly, unnoticed. She had learned something important over the past few days. The real truth did not live in daylight. It hid in the quiet, in the moments people thought no one was watching. She moved away from the main entrance, walking slowly through the side corridors. Her steps were measured, careful. She was not wandering aimlessly. She was listening, observing, following instinct. The staff hallways were quieter now. Most workers had either gone home or retreated to their designated areas. The air felt different here at night, heavier, less guarded. Eleanor passed by the administrative office. Empty. The front desk area, reduced staff, lower energy. She continued moving, deeper. Then she heard it. Voices, low, muffled, coming from one of the inner offices. Eleanor slowed instantly. Her senses sharpened. The door ahead was slightly ajar. Light spilled faintly into the hallway, and the voices became clearer. I am telling you, it is too much now. That voice nervous, be steady. Eleanor stepped closer, her movement silent, careful not to draw attention. Another voice responded. Calm, confident, familiar. You worry too much. Eleanor's breath slowed. She knew that voice. Mr. Bennett Cole, the accountant. Eleanor positioned herself just beside the door, staying out of sight. Her heart beat steadily, but her focus remained sharp. This is not small money anymore. The first voice continued. If someone checks, no one is checking. Cole interrupted smoothly. There was a pause. Then another voice spoke, colder, sharper. Mr. Hargrove. We have been over this, he said. Everything is under control. Eleanor felt a chill move down her spine. Both of them. Together. But the numbers? The nervous voice began again. The numbers are exactly where we want them, Cole replied. Eleanor leaned slightly closer. Her pulse quickened. Extra maintenance costs? Cole continued. Inflated supply expenses? It is clean. Clean. Eleanor's fingers curled slightly. And the excess? The nervous voice asked. A soft chuckle followed. That is why we are here. Is it not? Hargrove said. Silence. Heavy. Then, transfers are still going through the secondary accounts, Cole added. Untraceable. Eleanor's breath caught. There it was. Not suspicion, not mismanagement. Theft, calculated, organized, ongoing. We have been doing this for months, Hargrove said confidently. Months. Eleanor felt something shift inside her, a slow, controlled anger. Not explosive, not reckless, but deep, dangerous. What about the owner? The nervous voice asked quietly. Eleanor stilled. Her ears strained. Hargrove laughed, a low, dismissive sound. She does not come around, he said. And even if she did, she would not notice. Eleanor's jaw tightened. People like her do not bother with details, he continued. She sits in her big office and signs papers. Cole chuckled softly. and we make the real decisions. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, not from weakness, from control, because in that moment she understood everything. This was not just theft, this was betrayal. They were not just stealing money, they were dismantling her company, destroying its foundation, and hiding behind her name while doing it. "We just need to keep things steady," Cole continued. "No sudden changes. And the staff?" the nervous voice asked. Hargrove scoffed. "They are not a problem," he said. "The ones who ask questions do not stay long." Eleanor's heart dropped slightly. So that was it. The fear, the pressure, the dismissals. It was not just bad leadership, it was strategy. Silence the observant, control the rest. "And what about that boy?" Cole asked. Eleanor's attention sharpened instantly. "What boy?" Hargrove replied. "The one in front, always watching. Sawyer." Eleanor's breath stilled. "Sawyer?" "He is nothing," Hargrove said dismissively. "He notices things," Cole insisted. "I have seen him." There was a pause. Then, "Keep an eye on him," Hargrove said. "If he becomes a problem, we handle it." Eleanor felt a cold weight settle in her chest. Handle it. She did not like the sound of that. Not at all. Footsteps shifted inside the room. Chairs moved. The conversation was ending. Eleanor stepped back quickly, blending into the shadows of the hallway. The door opened, light spilled out. She kept her head slightly lowered as the men stepped out. They did not notice her. To them, she was still invisible. Just a security guard. Nothing more. They walked past her without a second glance. And in that moment, Eleanor made a decision. She waited until their footsteps faded completely. Then she exhaled slowly. Her heart was steady again, but her mind sharp, focused, locked in. Everything had changed. This was no longer just about fixing a broken system. This was about exposing a crime, a betrayal that had been happening under her own roof, under her own name. Eleanor straightened slightly, her posture shifting. Just for a moment. Not the security guard, but the woman behind the empire, the one they underestimated, the one they thought was absent, unaware, weak. A small, controlled smile touched her lips. They had made a mistake, a very big one. As she turned and walked slowly down the hallway, one thought echoed clearly in her mind. They thought no one was watching, but she was, and now she knew. Every move they had made, every lie they had told, every dollar they had stolen, and she was not going to confront them yet. No, that would be too easy, too quick, too forgiving. Instead, she would watch, gather, confirm. And when the time came, she would destroy everything they had built in her name, piece by piece. But one thought lingered longer than the rest. Sawyer. They had noticed him, which meant he was in danger. Eleanor's expression darkened slightly as she stepped out into the cool night air. The hotel glowed behind her, beautiful, deceptive, corrupt, and now personal. She adjusted her uniform slightly, her gaze steady. "This ends," she murmured softly to herself. Not as Eleanor the security guard, but as Eleanor Vance, the owner, the woman they underestimated. And this time she was no longer just watching, she was coming for them. The morning felt heavier than usual. Not because of the heat, not because of the work, but because Eleanor was no longer walking into the unknown. She was walking into a place where she now understood the truth, and the truth had weight. As she approached the Golden Crest Hotel, its polished glass exterior reflected the rising sun just like always, bright, flawless, almost blinding. But today, Eleanor did not admire it. She saw through it. Behind that beauty lived corruption. Behind those smiles, fear. Behind the system, betrayal. and now that she knew, she could not unknow it. She entered through the staff door, her steps calm but deliberate. The two workers at the entrance were there again, laughing, relaxed, unbothered. One of them glanced at her. "Still here?" he said with a smirk. Eleanor gave a small nod. "Yes." The other one chuckled. "Strong one." They returned to their conversation. Eleanor walked past them without a word, but inside her mind was already working. Those two, untouchable, allowed to slack, ignored by management. Why? Because they were not a threat. Because they were not asking questions. Because they were useful in their silence. The hallway buzzed with its usual tension. But today Eleanor noticed something new. Patterns were no longer vague. They were clear, sharp, intentional. The cleaners who worked the hardest were the ones constantly watched. The quiet ones, the observant ones, were the ones corrected most harshly, and the careless ones left alone, free, untouched. This was not poor leadership. This was control through pressure, and it was working. At the lobby, Eleanor took her usual position, standing, watching. But today her eyes moved differently. She was not just observing behavior anymore. She was tracking connections. Who spoke to who avoided who looked nervous, who looked comfortable. And slowly the picture became clearer. By mid-morning, Eleanor saw something that made her chest tighten. Sawyer. He was at the front, assisting a guest just as calm and composed as ever, but something was different, subtle, but there. His movements were slightly more careful, his eyes more alert, as if he was aware of being watched. Eleanor's stomach sank. They have noticed him. "Sawyer!" The voice cut sharply through the lobby. "Mr. Hargrove." Sawyer straightened immediately. "Yes, sir." "Come here." Sawyer walked over, calm but attentive. Eleanor shifted slightly, positioning herself just close enough to hear. "What is this?" Hargrove demanded, holding a document. Sawyer glanced at it briefly. "It is the delivery record from yesterday, sir." "And why does it not match the supply log?" The manager snapped. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Sawyer frowned slightly, not defensively, but with confusion. "I recorded everything as it was delivered, sir." Hargrove stepped closer. "So now you are saying the records are wrong?" "No, sir," Sawyer replied carefully. "I am saying what I saw." "What you saw?" Hargrove interrupted, his voice rising. "Or what you think you saw?" A few nearby staff members turned slightly, pretending not to listen. Eleanor felt her pulse rise. This was not correction. This was intimidation. Sawyer remained calm. "I only wrote what was delivered, sir." Hargrove laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Be careful, Sawyer," he said. "This is not a place for assumptions." "I understand, sir." "Good," Hargrove replied, "because mistakes like this can cost people their jobs." Silence, heavy, intentional. Sawyer nodded. "Yes, sir." "Fix it," the manager said, handing the paper back. Sawyer took it, but Eleanor noticed something. His fingers tightened slightly around the document. Not fear, not anger, something else. Awareness. Hargrove walked away just like that, leaving tension behind him like a shadow. Eleanor exhaled slowly. That was not random, that was deliberate. Sawyer had written something accurate, something that did not match the falsified records. And instead of correcting him, Eleanor's gaze followed Sawyer as he moved away. He did not look shaken, but he was not relaxed either. There was a quiet tension in his shoulders now, a carefulness that had not been there before. He knew something was off. Maybe not everything, but enough. Later in the afternoon, Eleanor saw another piece of the puzzle fall into place. A delivery arrived, large, heavy, multiple boxes. Eleanor watched closely as they were unloaded. She counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. She kept counting. Then she watched the paperwork. The numbers did not match. Again, a staff member approached the accountant's office with the delivery sheet. Eleanor followed at a distance, careful, quiet. Inside, she saw it happen. The staff member handed over the document. Cole barely looked at it. He took a pen, adjusted the numbers, signed it. Done. Just like that. Eleanor felt a slow, controlled anger build inside her. So simple, so effortless, as if stealing was just another task. As the day continued, Eleanor began to see the full picture. Fake expenses, altered records, controlled staff. And at the center of it all, fear. Because fear kept people silent. Fear kept people obedient. Fear kept the truth buried. But the part that unsettled her most was what came next. Late afternoon, the lobby had quieted slightly. Sawyer was speaking with a guest when one of the relaxed staff members approached him. "You are being watched," the man muttered under his breath. Sawyer's expression did not change, but Eleanor saw it, the slight pause. "What do you mean?" Sawyer asked quietly. The man shrugged. "Just saying, be careful." Then he walked away, just like that. Eleanor's heart tightened. So it was not just her. Others had noticed too, but they were not speaking, they were not acting, because they were afraid. Sawyer finished assisting the guest and stepped aside briefly. Eleanor watched him closely. He looked thoughtful now, focused. Connecting things, just like she was, and that was dangerous. A few minutes later, he approached Eleanor. "Are you okay today?" he asked quietly. Eleanor blinked slightly. Even now, he was thinking about her. "I am fine," she said. He nodded, but his eyes searched her face briefly, as if trying to read something. Then he spoke again, his voice lower this time. "Have you noticed anything strange here?" Eleanor's breath slowed. This was it. The moment she had to be careful. "I am new," she said softly. "Everything feels strange." Sawyer gave a small, knowing smile. "Fair enough." But he did not look convinced. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Sawyer spoke again. "Just be careful, okay?" Eleanor looked at him. "Why?" He hesitated, then shook his head slightly. "Just trust me." Eleanor's chest tightened. He knew. Not everything, but enough. Enough to be a problem, enough to be noticed, enough to be in danger. As he walked away, Eleanor's mind raced. This was no longer just about exposing corruption. It was about timing, strategy, protection, because if she moved too soon, they would cover their tracks. If she waited too long, they might silence anyone who got too close, including Sawyer. The realization settled heavily inside her. This was not a simple fix. This was a system carefully built, carefully hidden, and breaking it would require precision. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the hotel floor, Eleanor stood at her post once more, still calm, invisible. But inside, everything had changed. She was not just watching anymore. She was planning. Every detail, every move, every step. Her gaze shifted toward the manager's office, then to the accountant's department, then back to the lobby where Sawyer moved, still doing his job. Still kind, still unaware of just how close he was to danger. Eleanor's expression hardened slightly, not cold, but resolved. "They will not touch him," she murmured quietly, because now this was not just business. It was personal, and the people who thought they controlled everything had no idea who they were really dealing with. The ugly truth had revealed itself fully, clearly, irrefutably. And Eleanor Vance, the woman they thought was distant, absent, clueless, was standing right there, watching, waiting, and getting ready to end it all. Eleanor no longer needed confirmation that something was wrong. She needed proof of something else. Goodness. Real goodness. Not the kind performed under supervision, not the kind rehearsed for guests, but the kind that existed when no one was watching, Because if she was going to tear down corruption, she needed to know who deserved to rise when it was over. The morning air carried a quiet stillness as Eleanor approached the hotel. It was earlier than usual. The sun had barely begun its climb, casting a soft golden hue across the building's glass surface. At this hour, the hotel felt different. Less polished, less guarded, more honest. And that was exactly why she had come early. Inside, only a handful of staff were present. Cleaners moved quietly through the lobby. A receptionist yawned behind the desk. The usual noise and pressure had not fully awakened yet. Eleanor took her position near the entrance, her eyes scanning the space. Her mind was not focused on the manager or the accountant. Not today. Today was different. Today, she was watching the people. She had spent days observing patterns, fear, carelessness, cruelty, kindness, and one name kept rising above the rest. Sawyer. He arrived shortly after, on time, as always. His uniform neat, his expression calm. He greeted the receptionist. "Good morning." She nodded lazily. No warmth, no energy. Sawyer did not react. He simply moved on. Eleanor watched him closely. There was something steady about him, unshaken, not hardened, but grounded. And that was rare in a place like this. As the morning slowly unfolded, Eleanor continued her quiet observation. Sawyer helped a guest with luggage, assisted an elderly woman down the steps, gave directions to a confused visitor, all without being asked twice, all without expecting praise. It was not performance. It was instinct. Around mid-morning, Eleanor made her decision. If she wanted to know who Sawyer truly was, she had to remove all pressure, all observation, all consequence. She had to create a moment where no one was watching. So she waited, patient, careful, for the right moment. It came just before noon. The lobby was moderately busy, not crowded, not empty, just enough movement to create distraction. Sawyer had just finished assisting a guest and was walking back toward the entrance. Eleanor stepped slightly away from her usual position. Her heart remained steady. Her expression, neutral. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her wallet. Inside it, cash. A significant amount. More than enough to tempt. More than enough to test. Without hesitation, she let it fall. Right onto the polished floor. Not dramatically, not obviously. Just enough to be noticed by the right person. She kept walking. Slowly, deliberately, not looking back. Her pulse remained controlled, but her mind was alert, watching, waiting. A few steps away, she stopped near a column, positioned just enough to observe the scene without drawing attention. The wallet lay there, still, unnoticed, for a moment. Then a staff member walked past. He glanced down, saw it, paused. Eleanor's breath slowed. He nudged it slightly with his shoe, looked around, then walked away, leaving it there. Another passed. This one did not even slow down. Too busy, too uninterested. Then a third. She noticed it immediately. His eyes flickered toward it. He hesitated, just briefly, then kept walking. Eleanor felt something settle in her chest. Not disappointment, just confirmation. Minutes passed. The wallet remained. Unclaimed, ignored, testing the space, testing the people. Then Sawyer. He walked toward the entrance, his usual calm pace, his eyes scanning naturally, observant, present. He saw it. Eleanor knew the moment it happened. His steps slowed. He stopped, looked down. For a second he did not move, just observed. Then he bent down, picked it up. Eleanor held her breath. Not from fear, from anticipation. Sawyer opened the wallet, not greedily, not hurriedly, just enough to check. To identify. Inside, cash. Plenty of it. Anyone else might have paused longer. Considered. Hesitated. But Sawyer did not. He closed it immediately. His expression unchanged, then he looked around, scanning the area, searching. Eleanor felt something shift inside her. A quiet warmth. Sawyer moved quickly now, purposefully. His eyes landed on Eleanor. He walked toward her. "Excuse me," he said gently. Eleanor turned as if unaware. "Yes?" "You dropped this," he said, holding out the wallet. Eleanor looked at it, then at him. "I did?" He nodded. "I saw it on the floor." Eleanor took it slowly. "Thank you." Sawyer gave a small smile. "You are welcome." Eleanor hesitated, just slightly. Then she opened the wallet. Everything was still there, untouched, exactly as she left it. "You did not take anything?" she asked softly. "It was not suspicion, it was part of the test." Sawyer blinked slightly, then smiled again. "Why would I?" Simple, direct, no offense, no defensiveness, just honesty. Eleanor studied him closely, looking for cracks, for hesitation, for performance, but there was none. "There is a lot of money in here," she said. Sawyer shrugged lightly. "It is yours." That was it. No speech, no self-praise, no expectation, just truth. Eleanor felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Not surprise, not relief, something deeper. Respect. "Thank you," she said again. This time softer, more genuine. Sawyer nodded, then added quietly, "You should be careful. Not everyone would return it." Eleanor held his gaze. "I know." He gave a small understanding nod, then stepped away, returning to his duties, as if nothing had happened. But for Eleanor, everything had changed. She stood there for a moment holding the wallet, feeling its weight. But more than that feeling, what it represented. Truth. In a place filled with deception, she had found something real. Her eyes followed Sawyer as he moved through the lobby. Helping, working, existing in a way that did not match the corruption around him, and suddenly everything became clearer. This was not just about exposing the bad, it was about protecting the good, elevating it, giving it space to grow. Because people like Sawyer were rare, and in a system like this, they did not survive long. Eleanor's grip on the wallet tightened slightly, not from tension, from decision. She would not let this place swallow him. She would not let corruption crush what was honest. Because now she knew. Not hoped, not guessed. Knew. Sawyer was different. And when the time came, when everything fell apart, when truth finally surfaced, he would rise. Not because she chose him, but because he had already proven himself. Without knowing. Without trying, without expecting anything in return. Eleanor slipped the wallet back into her pocket, her expression calm, but her eyes sharper than ever. The test was complete, and the result was undeniable. In a building filled with masks, she had finally found someone real, and that changed everything. Something had changed. Not in the hotel, not in the system, not in the corruption Eleanor had uncovered. That remained exactly as it was. Cold, calculated, and quietly spreading beneath the polished surface of Golden Crest. But within her, something had shifted. Eleanor walked toward the hotel that morning with a steadier mind, but a softer heart. Not weaker. Never that. But more aware. Because now when she looked at the place, she did not just see a broken system. She saw people, and among them, she saw him. Sawyer. The name came to her more easily now, not as a passing observation, but as a presence. She entered through the staff door, her expression calm, her movements familiar. The usual workers were there, the same lazy greetings, the same dismissive glances. Nothing new, nothing worth noting. Her focus had already moved beyond them. The hallway buzzed with its usual tension. Mr. Hargrove's voice echoed faintly in the distance. Sharp, impatient, controlling. Somewhere else a staff member rushed past, eyes lowered. The system was still intact, still suffocating, but Eleanor no longer felt consumed by it, because now she had something else to hold on to. When she reached the main entrance, she did not have to search. He was already there. Sawyer stood near the driveway, assisting an elderly guest out of a car. His movements were gentle, careful. He held the woman's hand just long enough to steady her, then released it respectfully. "Take your time, ma'am," he said softly. "No rush, no pressure, just patience." Eleanor watched him, not like before, not as an observer gathering information, but as someone noticing. There was a quiet strength in him, not loud, not forceful, but steady, unshaken by the chaos around him. He turned slightly, and their eyes met for a brief moment. Then he smiled, not wide, not exaggerated, just enough. "Good morning, Eleanor." Her name again simple, but it landed differently each time. "Good morning," she replied. He walked over after finishing with the guest. "You are early today," he said. "So are you," she replied. He shrugged lightly. "Habit." There was a brief pause, comfortable, not awkward, and that alone surprised her. Most conversations she had experienced in recent years had been calculated, measured, filtered. But this was easy. "How are you feeling today?" he asked. Eleanor blinked slightly. The question caught her off guard, not because it was unusual, but because it was sincere. "I am fine," she said. Sawyer tilted his head slightly. "You said that yesterday." Eleanor almost smiled. "And the day before," he added. She let out a small breath. "I am less tired today." He nodded. "That is good." Another pause, but again it was not empty. It was calm. Before long, the day picked up. Guests arrived, cars pulled in, the rhythm of the hotel resumed. Sawyer moved seamlessly through it all, as always, but this time Eleanor noticed more. Not just what he did, but how he carried himself. He greeted the same receptionist who barely acknowledged him with kindness. He helped a cleaner adjust her cart without being asked. He stepped in when another staff member struggled with luggage. Not for attention, not for recognition, just because it needed to be done. Eleanor found herself watching him more than anything else. Not intentionally, but naturally, and somewhere along the way her thoughts began to shift. Why is he still like this? In a place that rewarded indifference, encouraged silence, punished honesty? How had he remained untouched? The question stayed with her. By mid-afternoon, the heat returned in full force. Eleanor felt it settle into her skin, her uniform clinging slightly as the hours stretched on. She adjusted her stance, subtle, controlled, but noticeable. Sawyer noticed. Of course he did. "Still standing strong?" he asked lightly as he passed by. Eleanor gave a small nod. "I do not have a choice." He slowed slightly. "There is always a choice, he said. She looked at him. "Not here." Sawyer paused, just for a moment, then he leaned slightly closer. "You are right," he said quietly. "Not here." There was something in his tone, something that matched her thoughts more than he realized. Later, during a brief lull, Sawyer returned again. This time he carried 2 small packs of snacks. He held one out to her. "You should eat." Eleanor looked at it, then at him. "I did not ask for this." "I know," he said. "Then why?" Because you need it. She hesitated, not because she did not want it, but because she was not used to this. Care without condition, kindness without expectation. Slowly, she took it. Thank you. Sawyer nodded. No problem. They stood side by side for a moment, both eating quietly, watching the hotel move around them. This place, Eleanor began, then stopped. Sawyer glanced at her. What about it? She hesitated again, choosing her words carefully. It feels different from what it should be. Sawyer gave a small, knowing smile. That is one way to put it. She turned slightly toward him. What would you say? He took a moment, then spoke quietly. It used to feel better. Eleanor's chest tightened slightly. Used to? What changed? She asked softly. Sawyer exhaled. People stopped caring about the right things. The answer was simple, but it carried weight. Eleanor looked ahead again at the lobby, at the movement, at the illusion. And you? She asked. Why did not you? Sawyer did not answer immediately. He thought about it, really thought. Then he said, Because I know what it feels like when people do not care. Eleanor felt that deep. My family, he continued quietly. We did not have much. There were times when a small act of kindness made all the difference. He shrugged lightly. So I try to be that when I can. Eleanor's throat tightened slightly, not from sadness, from something else, something warmer. You do not get tired? She asked. Sawyer smiled faintly. I do. Then why keep doing it? He glanced at her, and for a moment there was something more in his eyes, something softer, something honest. Because it matters, he said. Eleanor looked away quickly, not because she wanted to, but because something in her chest had shifted again. This was not just admiration anymore. It was something deeper, something she had not felt in a long time. Connection. As the day moved toward evening, their conversations became easier, longer, more natural. They spoke about small things, life, work, little observations. Sawyer made her laugh once, a quiet, unexpected laugh that caught her off guard. You are smiling, he pointed out. She quickly straightened her expression. I am not. He chuckled softly. You are. She shook her head, but this time she did not try as hard to hide it. And somewhere in between the conversations, the shared silence, the small acts of kindness, something began to grow. Not loudly, not obviously, but steadily, like a seed planted quietly beneath the surface. By the time the sun began to set, painting the sky in warm shades of orange and gold, Eleanor stood at her post once more, but she did not feel the same. The hotel was still broken, the corruption still real, the danger still present, but within it, she had found something unexpected, something worth holding on to. Her eyes found Sawyer again as he moved through the fading light, still working, still kind, still unaware of the impact he was having. Eleanor's lips curved slightly, soft, unnoticed, and for the first time since she began this journey, her mission was not just about exposing the truth. It was also about protecting something fragile, something rare, something that felt a little too important. And as she stood there watching him, one quiet realization settled into her heart. This was no longer just business. It was becoming personal. Eleanor no longer needed more evidence. She had seen enough, heard enough, understood enough. The Golden Crest Hotel stood just as it always did, radiant, polished, admired, but to Eleanor it no longer looked like an achievement. It looked like a lie. She walked in through the staff entrance that morning with a calm expression, but inside something had shifted. The quiet patience she had carried since the beginning was thinning. Not gone, but stretched, fragile. Because now this was not just about corruption, it was not just about stolen money. It was not just about broken systems, it was about people. And today something in the air felt wrong. The hallway was unusually tense, even more than usual. Staff moved quickly, their conversations hushed, their eyes avoiding contact. Fear, thicker than before. Eleanor slowed her steps. Her instincts sharpened immediately. Something had happened or something was about to. She reached the main lobby and took her position. Her eyes scanned the space. Everything looked normal, but it was not. Then she saw him, Sawyer. He stood near the front desk, holding a document. His posture was calm, but his expression focused, serious. And standing in front of him, Mr. Hargrove. Eleanor's chest tightened. She stepped slightly closer, careful not to draw attention. "What is this?" Hargrove demanded, holding up a paper. His voice was louder than usual, sharp, deliberate. Sawyer spoke calmly. "It is the supply record from this morning, sir." "And why?" Hargrove continued, raising his voice further. "Does it not match the official report?" The lobby quieted slightly, not completely, but enough people were listening, even if they pretended not to. Sawyer did not flinch. "I recorded what was delivered," he said. Eleanor felt her pulse rise. Hargrove stepped closer, too close. "You recorded or you decided?" he asked coldly. Sawyer held his ground. "I wrote exactly what I saw." There it was. The truth. Simple, clear, dangerous. Hargrove laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "You see, this is the problem with some of you," he said loudly, making sure others could hear. "You think you are smarter than the system." Eleanor's hands clenched at her sides. "I am not trying to be smarter, sir," Sawyer replied. "I am just doing my job." "Your job?" Hargrove repeated. "Your job is to follow instructions." Silence spread, heavy, uncomfortable. Sawyer spoke again, carefully. "But if the records are wrong—" "Are you saying I am wrong?" Hargrove snapped. There it was. The trap. Eleanor's heart pounded. Sawyer hesitated, just briefly, but it was enough. "I am saying there may be a mistake," he said. Hargrove's expression darkened. That was all he needed. "A mistake?" he said slowly. "Or an accusation?" The tension in the room thickened. Eleanor could feel it, the shift. This was not about correcting an error. This was about making an example. Hargrove turned slightly, addressing the nearby staff. "You see this?" he said. "This is what happens when people forget their place." Eleanor's chest burned. Sawyer stood still, calm, but Eleanor could see it now, the weight pressing down on him. "I'm just trying to do things properly, sir," Sawyer said. "Properly?" Hargrove scoffed. "Or disruptively?" The words hit harder than they sounded. "You have been asking too many questions," the manager continued, watching too closely. Eleanor's breath caught. Sawyer said nothing, but his silence said enough. "And now," Hargrove added, "you are creating inconsistencies in official records." "That is not true," Sawyer said firmly. The firmness in his voice made a few heads turn. Eleanor felt something shift inside her. Pride and fear. Hargrove stepped even closer. His voice dropped, low, dangerous. "Be very careful, Sawyer," he said. "You are walking a thin line." Sawyer met his gaze, not challenging, not submissive, just steady. "I'm not doing anything wrong," he said. And that was the moment everything broke. Hargrove straightened suddenly. His expression hardened completely. "That is enough," he said. The room stilled. "You are fired." The words landed like a blow. Silence, complete. Eleanor felt her heart stop. Sawyer blinked just once. "Sir," he said quietly. "You heard me?" Hargrove replied. "You are done here." The lobby froze. Some staff looked down, others stared. No one spoke. Eleanor's nails pressed into her palms hard. Sawyer swallowed. "I did not do anything wrong." "It does not matter," Hargrove said coldly. "You are no longer needed." The cruelty of it, the simplicity, the power. Eleanor felt anger rise, hot, sharp, uncontrolled, but she stayed still. She had to. Sawyer stood there for a moment, long enough for the humiliation to settle. Then he nodded slowly. "I understand," he said, but his voice carried something deeper. Not defeat, not fully dignity. Eleanor felt her chest tighten painfully. Sawyer turned, not rushing, not breaking, just leaving. And no one stopped him. No one spoke, because this place had taught them something very well. Silence was survival. Eleanor watched him walk away, each step heavier than the last. Something inside her snapped. Not loudly, not visibly, but completely. This was not just corruption anymore. This was destruction. They were not just stealing money, they were destroying people, good people, people like Sawyer. Eleanor's vision sharpened. Her breathing slowed, controlled, dangerously calm. She turned slightly, her gaze landing on Hargrove. He looked satisfied. Satisfied. That was the breaking point. Eleanor stepped forward just slightly, almost without thinking, but she stopped herself. Not yet. Not like this. Because this was not just about reacting. This was about ending everything completely. She exhaled slowly. Her hands relaxed, but her eyes hardened. They had made a mistake, a fatal one. They had touched something they should not have. Sawyer. As the lobby slowly returned to its false normal, Eleanor stood there, unmoving. But inside, everything was shifting. Plans forming. Decisions locking into place. No more waiting. No more observing. The time had come. She would expose them publicly, completely, irreversibly. And when she did, they would not just lose their jobs, they would lose everything. Eleanor turned slowly and walked away from the entrance. Her steps calm, measured, silent. But every step carried one clear thought: this ends now. Because the moment they fired Sawyer, they sealed their fate. The morning felt different, not because the hotel had changed. It had not. The same polished floors reflected the same artificial smiles. The same staff moved with the same rehearsed urgency. The same management operated behind closed doors, believing themselves untouchable. But something had changed. Eleanor. She stood in front of the mirror in her private suite, the one no one in the hotel even knew she still used. For days she had looked at herself in disguise, a uniform that hid her presence, a cap that dimmed her identity, a role that made her invisible. But today, there was no hiding. The security uniform lay neatly folded on the bed behind her. Next to it, her true reflection, a tailored, deep, emerald dress that hugged her curves with quiet authority. Gold jewelry rested against her skin, not excessive, but unmistakably elegant. Her hair was styled flawlessly, framing a face that carried both strength and calm. This was Eleanor Vance. Not the security guard, not the observer, the owner, the force behind everything. She adjusted the cuff of her sleeve slowly, her expression steady. Her eyes met her reflection. No hesitation, no doubt, only certainty. "They thought I would not notice," she murmured softly. A faint smile touched her lips. "They were wrong." A soft knock came at the door. "Tara," Eleanor said. The door opened and her assistant stepped in, her eyes widening slightly at the sight of her. Ma'am? Eleanor turned. Everything is ready? Tara nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. The documents, the recordings, everything you requested. Eleanor stepped forward, picking up a sleek folder from the table. Good. Tara hesitated. Are you sure you want to do this publicly? Eleanor looked at her, calm, unshaken. They humiliated my staff publicly, she said. They will answer publicly. Tara lowered her gaze. Yes, ma'am. Minutes later, the message went out. All staff were to gather in the main lobby immediately. Confusion spread quickly. Staff whispered among themselves. Guests watched curiously. Mr. Hargrove frowned as he stepped out of his office. What is this about? He demanded. No one had answers. The lobby began to fill. Receptionists, cleaners, security, bellboys, even the accountant Cole arrived, his expression slightly annoyed. This better be important, he muttered. And then the doors opened. The sound of heels echoed softly against the polished floor, slow, steady, deliberate. Conversations stopped, heads turned, eyes widened. Eleanor Vance walked into the lobby. For a moment no one spoke because recognition did not come instantly, crept in slowly, shockingly. The security guard, the quiet woman who stood by the door, the one they ignored, was standing before them, radiant, powerful, unmistakable. Mr. Hargrove's face drained of color. Cole froze completely. Eleanor stopped at the center of the lobby. Her presence alone silenced the room. She looked around at every face, every reaction, every realization. Then she spoke. I believe, she said calmly, you have all met me. Silence. Thick, heavy, unavoidable. I am Eleanor Vance, she continued, the owner of this hotel. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Some staff stepped back, others looked down. A few stared in disbelief. Mr. Hargrove swallowed hard. Ma'am, Eleanor raised a hand and he stopped immediately. Do not, she said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried absolute authority. You have said enough over the past few days. Her gaze moved across the room again, taking everything in. For the past week, she continued, I have been here, watching, listening, learning. Murmurs spread, low, uneasy. And what I found, she paused, her expression tightening slightly, was not what I built. Silence returned, heavier this time. Eleanor opened the folder in her hand, slowly, deliberately. I found disrespect, she said, a glance toward the reception desk, neglect, a glance toward the cleaning staff, and leadership built on fear. Mr. Hargrove shifted uncomfortably. But that is not all, Eleanor added. Her tone changed subtly, but enough. She tapped the folder lightly. I also found something else. Cole's face tightened. Fraud. The word landed like thunder. Complete silence. Eleanor turned slightly, her gaze locking onto Cole, then shifting to Hargrove. Would you like to explain? She asked calmly. Neither man spoke. Or should I? She added. Still nothing. Eleanor nodded slightly. As expected. She lifted a small device from the folder. A recording. Without another word, she pressed play. The lobby filled with voices, familiar voices. The extra funds will not be traced. Cole's voice. We have been doing this for months. Hargrove's voice. She does not even come around. The room froze. Every word echoed, clear, undeniable. Staff looked at each other. Shock, disbelief, realization. Eleanor let the recording play just long enough. Then she turned it off. Silence followed, crushing. She looked at the two men again. Do you deny this? She asked. Cole opened his mouth, closed it. Hargrove tried. "Ma'am, this is—" "Careful," Eleanor said softly. He stopped, because now he understood. This was not a conversation. This was judgment. Eleanor stepped forward slightly. "I trusted you," she said, her voice quieter now, but more dangerous. "I gave you responsibility." She paused. "And you used it to steal from me." No one moved. No one spoke. Eleanor exhaled slowly. "I could have handled this quietly," she said, "but you did not operate quietly." Her gaze hardened. "You humiliated my staff." Her voice sharpened slightly. "You created fear." Another step forward. "And yesterday," a pause, "you fired an innocent man for telling the truth." The weight of those words settled deeply into the room. Eleanor straightened. "That was your final mistake." As if on cue, the doors opened again. Uniformed officers stepped inside. The police. Gasps filled the room. Cole staggered slightly. No, this is—" Hargrove's composure shattered. "Ma'am, please, this can be discussed." "It has been discussed," Eleanor said calmly. "Just not with you." The officers approached. "This is not necessary," Cole began. "It is," Eleanor replied. And just like that, they were taken. No dignity, no power, no control, gone. The lobby remained silent long after they disappeared, because everyone understood now. Everything had changed. Eleanor turned slowly to face the rest of the staff. Her expression softened slightly, but her presence remained strong. "This hotel," she said, "was built on respect." Her voice carried through the space, not fear. She looked at them, really looked, and that will not be forgotten again. No one spoke, but something shifted. Relief, hope. Eleanor closed the folder. "This is not the end," she said. "It is the beginning." And as she stood there, no longer hidden, no longer silent, the truth had been revealed, and nothing would ever be the same again. The silence lingered in the lobby long after the police had taken Mr. Hargrove and Mr. Cole away. Not the peaceful kind of silence, the kind that comes after something breaks, after truth crashes through illusion and leaves everything exposed. No one moved at first. Staff stood where they were, as if afraid that even breathing too loudly might disrupt whatever had just happened. Some stared at the doors the police had exited through. Others stared at Eleanor, and a few simply stared at the floor. Eleanor stood at the center of it all, still, composed, unshaken. But inside there was movement. Not doubt, never that, but awareness. Because this moment, this silence, was fragile. What she did next would determine everything. She let the quiet stretch, just long enough. Then she took a step forward. "You can breathe," she said calmly. The words were simple, but they landed. A few staff members shifted. Someone exhaled audibly. Another adjusted their posture. The tension did not disappear, but it loosened. Eleanor's gaze moved across the room. Not as a distant owner, not as a disguised observer, but as someone seeing them, really seeing them, for the first time in a long time. "I know what you are feeling," she said. A few heads lifted. "Confusion," she continued. "Fear, uncertainty." She nodded slightly. "That is what happens when a system built on pressure collapses." Her voice remained steady, grounded. "But let me make something very clear." She paused. "That system is over." The words settled into the room like a promise. Eleanor walked slowly, deliberately, her heels echoing softly against the floor. Not pacing, not intimidating, just present. "I have seen how some of you have been treated," she said. Her gaze moved toward the cleaning staff, the ones who had been shouted at, rushed, humiliated. That will not continue. She turned slightly, looking toward the front desk. I have seen the lack of care. A few receptionists shifted uncomfortably. That will also change. Her tone was not harsh, but it was firm. This hotel will return to what it was meant to be, she said. Then she stopped right at the center again. But that does not happen with words alone. Her eyes sharpened slightly. It happens with people. Silence. But this time it was attentive. Eleanor closed the folder in her hands and handed it to Tara, who stepped forward. Effective immediately, Eleanor continued, there will be a full review of all departments. Murmurs began, soft, uneasy. Not to punish, she added, but to understand. That quieted them. I am not here to remove people who are trying, she said. I am here to remove what is broken. Her gaze lingered briefly on a few faces, and to strengthen what is good. A shift, subtle but real. Eleanor turned toward the group of cleaners. You? She said gently, gesturing to the young woman who had been scolded days before. The girl froze. Her eyes widened. Yes, ma'am, she said nervously. Eleanor stepped closer, not towering, not intimidating. What is your name? Sophie, she replied softly. Eleanor nodded. Sophie. She paused, then asked, Do you feel respected in this workplace? The question hung in the air, heavy. Sophie hesitated. Her eyes flickered around. Fear, habit? Eleanor's voice softened. You can answer honestly. Sophie swallowed, then shook her head slightly. No, ma'am. A ripple moved through the staff. Eleanor nodded. Thank you. She did not correct her, did not comfort her, just acknowledged her truth. Then she turned back to everyone. This is where we begin, she said. Not with assumptions, not with reports, but with voices, real voices. Eleanor continued speaking, calm, clear. From today, there will be new reporting channels, she said, direct. Anonymous, if needed. A few staff exchanged glances, hope. Cautious but present. No one, she added, will lose their job for asking questions. That landed deeply, and no one, her tone sharpened slightly, will keep their job for silencing others. Silence followed, but it was different now. Carried weight. Understanding. Then Eleanor did something unexpected. She stepped back slightly. As for leadership, she said, there will be changes. Of course, everyone expected that, but not immediately, she added. That caught attention. I have already seen who leads even without a title. A pause. Her gaze moved across the room, slowly, carefully. Some looked hopeful, others uncertain. Eleanor did not announce names. Not yet. Because leadership was not just about being chosen, it was about being proven. She turned slightly toward Tara. Prepare temporary oversight, she said. Yes, ma'am. Then Eleanor faced the staff again. For now, she said, you will return to your duties. A small pause. But this time, her voice softened slightly, you will not work in fear. One by one, people began to move, slowly, carefully, not rushed, not forced, but lighter. A receptionist adjusted her posture. A cleaner straightened her shoulders. A staff member who had been silent for days finally exhaled fully. Something had changed. Not everything. Not yet. But enough. Eleanor remained where she was for a moment longer. Watching. This time not as an outsider. Not as a disguise. But as the woman responsible. And for the first time since she began this journey, she felt something settle inside her. Not satisfaction, not yet, but progress. As the lobby slowly returned to life, this time more real than before, Eleanor turned slightly. Her eyes moved instinctively toward the entrance, the place where she had stood for days, invisible, watching, learning, and for a brief moment she saw herself there again, the quiet security guard, the one no one noticed, the one who saw everything. Eleanor smiled faintly. That version of her had done her job well. But now there was one thing left, one person left. Sawyer. Her expression shifted slightly, not as the owner, not as the leader, but as something more human, because justice had been served, the system had been broken, the truth had been revealed. But something else remained unfinished, something personal. And as Eleanor turned and began walking toward her office, one thought stayed quietly in her mind. Now it is time to find him. The hotel felt different, not just quieter, not just calmer, but lighter. It was not something anyone could point to directly. There were no banners, no announcements echoing through the halls, no visible transformation overnight, and yet everyone felt it. The fear that once lingered in every corner had begun to loosen its grip. Staff spoke a little more freely. Movements felt less rushed. Eyes lifted more often instead of staying fixed on the ground. It was not perfect, not yet. But it was beginning. Eleanor stood in her office overlooking the same city she had watched days ago. But this time her reflection in the glass did not feel distant. It felt present. The folder in her hand was different from the one she carried the day before. Not filled with evidence, not filled with corruption. This one held names, staff records, performance notes, observations, and most importantly, decisions. She placed it gently on the desk and opened it. Each page represented a person, a story, a role within the system she was rebuilding. Her eyes moved carefully, not just reading, remembering. Sophie, the cleaner who had worked through exhaustion, still respectful, still trying. Another name? Liam, a maintenance worker who had quietly fixed problems others ignored. And then Sawyer. Eleanor paused. Her fingers rested lightly on his file. There was less written about him than she expected. No major titles, no official recognition, and yet she had seen more than any file could hold. Integrity, consistency, kindness. She closed the folder slowly. Her decision was already made. Later that morning, a message was sent out. All staff were to gather again. This time there was no confusion, no fear, only anticipation, because yesterday had changed everything, and today they were waiting to see what came next. The lobby filled once more. But this time the energy was different. People stood straighter. Whispers carried curiosity instead of fear. Eyes moved toward the entrance, not in dread but expectation. Eleanor entered again. Calm, composed, powerful. But today there was something softer in her expression. She stepped forward, waited, let the room settle. Then she spoke. Yesterday we removed what was broken. Silence, tentative. Today we build what remains. A shift, subtle, but meaningful. Eleanor's gaze moved across the room. I have spent the past week observing, she said, not just the problems, a pause, but the people. That caught their attention. Because a company is not defined by its structure, she said, it is defined by the people who carry it. Her voice softened slightly. And some of you have carried more than you should have. A few heads lowered, not in shame, but in recognition. Eleanor nodded once. That ends now. She took a step forward. From today, those who have shown integrity will be recognized. Murmurs spread, soft, hopeful. Not because they asked much, she added, but because they earned it. She opened the folder. The first name, she said, is Sophie. The young cleaner froze. Sophie, Eleanor repeated. Step forward. Slowly, nervously. Sophie stepped out. Her hands trembled slightly. Eleanor looked at her, not as a superior, but as someone acknowledging effort. You have worked under pressure, Eleanor said, without recognition. Sophie's eyes filled slightly. That changes today. Eleanor continued. You will be promoted to supervisor of your unit. A gasp. Sophie blinked rapidly. Ma'am, Eleanor raised a hand gently. You have already proven yourself. Sophie nodded, unable to speak. More names followed. Liam, promoted. Another staff member recognized. One by one, the quiet workers, the overlooked ones, the consistent ones, stepped forward, and for the first time they were seen, not ignored, not dismissed, seen. Then Eleanor paused. The room grew still again. Because something about the pause felt different. Her eyes moved slowly across the crowd, until they stopped near the back. Sawyer, he stood still, uncertain, because he did not expect anything. He never had. Sawyer. His name echoed softly. He looked up. Come forward. The room shifted slightly. Some turned to look at him. Others whispered quietly. Sawyer stepped forward, calm but hesitant. He stopped a few steps away from Eleanor. Ma'am, he said respectfully. Eleanor studied him for a moment. This was the first time they stood like this, not as equals in disguise, not as two people sharing quiet moments, but as employer and employee, and yet something still felt the same. You did not know who I was, she said. Sawyer shook his head. No, ma'am, and yet you treated me with respect. A pause. With kindness. Sawyer looked slightly uncomfortable. I just did what I thought was right, he said. Eleanor smiled faintly. That is exactly the point. She took a step closer. You were honest when it was difficult. Another step. You were kind when it was not required. The room was completely silent now, and you stood your ground. A pause. When it cost you your job. Sawyer's gaze dropped slightly. I did not want to lose it, he admitted quietly. Eleanor's expression softened. I know. She straightened. That is why. A brief pause. I would like to offer you a new position. The room leaned in. Assistant Operations Manager. Gasps, whispers. Sawyer blinked. Ma'am, He stopped, because this was not something he had imagined. Not even close. I do not have experience for that, he said honestly. Eleanor nodded. Maybe not on paper, she said. She looked at him directly. But I have seen your character. Pause. And that matters more. Sawyer hesitated. I just want to work honestly, he said. Eleanor smiled. And that is exactly why you are the right person. Silence. Then slowly Sawyer nodded. I will do my best. Eleanor smiled deep and slightly. I know you will. As he stepped back, something lingered in the air, not just admiration, not just respect, something quieter, something deeper. Eleanor closed the folder. "This is only the beginning," she said. Her gaze moved across everyone again. "Work with integrity," she continued, "and you will be seen." The meeting ended, but no one rushed away because something had shifted, not just in structure, but in spirit. As people slowly returned to their duties, Eleanor remained where she was for a moment longer. Her eyes found Sawyer again. He was speaking with another staff member now, still calm, still grounded, as if nothing had changed, and yet everything had. Eleanor turned slowly and walked away. But this time, her steps felt lighter because she had done more than fix a problem. She had built something new. And within it, she had found someone worth more than she expected, someone real, someone rare. And as she walked back toward her office, one quiet thought stayed with her. The story was not over yet. The hotel had changed. Not overnight, not magically, but steadily. Days passed after the restructuring, and with each one, the atmosphere inside Golden Crest softened. The tension that once lived in every hallway began to fade. Staff greeted each other more naturally. Smiles, real ones, started to replace the forced expressions that had once defined the place. Even the silence felt different, lighter, safer. And at the center of that change was Eleanor. But for all the transformation she had created around her, something within her remained unsettled, not uncomfortable, not uncertain, just new. She stood by her office window again, looking out over the city as evening settled in. The same view, the same lights, the same skyline stretching endlessly beyond her reach. But she was not thinking about business. Not tonight. She was thinking about him. Sawyer. The name came to her more often now, not as a passing thought, not as part of a decision, but as a feeling. She exhaled slowly, her reflection faintly visible against the glass. For years, her life had been structured, clear, controlled, work, growth, expansion, success. Everything had a place. Everything made sense. But this did not follow structure. It did not fit into plans or reports or decisions. It just existed, and that made it harder to ignore. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," Eleanor said. The door opened slightly. Sawyer stepped in. For a brief moment, everything else faded. He stood there just as he always had. Calm, grounded, unchanged. But the space between them was different now. "Ma'am," he said respectfully. Eleanor turned fully. Her expression composed, but her eyes softened slightly. "Sawyer?" He stepped forward, holding a file. "I reviewed the operational reports you asked for," he said. She nodded. "Thank you." He placed the file on her desk, but he did not leave. A small pause settled between them. Eleanor noticed it. So did he. "You have been doing well," she said. It was not just a compliment, it was acknowledgement. Sawyer nodded. "I am learning." She smiled faintly. "You are adapting quickly." He hesitated, then said quietly, "I had a good example." Eleanor raised an eyebrow slightly. "From who?" Sawyer looked at her. "You." The word hung in the air. Eleanor did not respond immediately because something about the way he said it was not formal, was not strategic. It was real. She walked around the desk slowly, closing the distance between them. "That is interesting," she said softly. Sawyer watched her carefully. "Why?" he asked. Eleanor stopped a few steps away. "Because," she said, "you were already doing the right things before you knew who I was." Pause. Sawyer's gaze dropped briefly. "I did not think about it like that," he admitted. Eleanor studied him. "That is what makes it real." Silence settled again, but this time it felt heavier. Not uncomfortable, just charged. Sawyer shifted slightly. There is something I wanted to ask, he said. Eleanor tilted her head. Go on. He hesitated. Then, why did you do it? Eleanor's expression changed slightly. Do what? The disguise, he said. A small pause. Eleanor exhaled slowly. Because I did not trust what I was hearing, she said. I needed to see it myself. Sawyer nodded. That makes sense. She watched him carefully. But that is not what you are really asking, she said. Sawyer gave a small, almost embarrassed smile. No. Pause. I am asking why you stayed. That question landed deeper. Eleanor looked away briefly, toward the window. Because I saw something worth staying for, she said quietly. Sawyer's breath slowed. What? Eleanor turned back to him. You. Silence. Complete. Sawyer blinked. Me? Eleanor nodded. Yes. She stepped closer. You were kind when no one was watching, she said. You were honest when it cost you. Another step. And you did not change even when everything around you did. Sawyer held her gaze. I was just being myself, he said. Eleanor's voice softened. That is why it matters. The space between them had closed now. Not completely, but enough. Enough to feel the shift. Sawyer exhaled slowly. This is different, he admitted. Eleanor smiled faintly. Yes. He hesitated. You are my boss. She nodded. And you are my employee. Pause. And yet, she added softly. Sawyer looked at her. And yet? He asked. Eleanor's expression softened. I do not feel like that when I'm talking to you. Silence. Sawyer's heartbeat felt louder than it should. I do not either, he said quietly. The truth sat between them now, unspoken for so long, but impossible to ignore. Eleanor stepped back slightly, not retreating, just grounding herself. This is not simple, she said. Sawyer nodded. I know. But it is real, she added. He looked at her. Yes. Another pause. This one heavier. Because now they both understood. Eleanor walked slowly toward the window again. I have spent years building control, she said, making sure everything in my life made sense. She turned back. And then, you happened. Sawyer smiled slightly. I did not plan that, he said. Eleanor almost laughed. I know. He took a step closer. Neither did I, he admitted. Their eyes met again. No titles, no roles, no hierarchy, just two people. Eleanor's voice softened. What do we do with this? Sawyer thought for a moment, then said simply, We do not rush it. She nodded. That is wise. He smiled faintly. I try. A quiet warmth settled between them. Not overwhelming, not dramatic, but steady, real. Sawyer picked up the file he had brought. I should get back to work, he said. Eleanor nodded. Yes. He turned to leave, then paused. Eleanor. She looked at him, not as his boss, just as herself. Yes. He hesitated, then smiled slightly. I am glad you stayed. Eleanor's expression softened. So am I. He left, and the room felt different. Not empty, but changed. Eleanor stood there for a long moment, her heart steady, but full. Because for the first time in a long time, she was not just building something external. She was feeling something internal, something she could not control, something she did not want to. And as the city lights flickered to life outside her window, one quiet truth settled into her heart. This was not just a connection, it was the beginning of something deeper, something real, a different kind of love. Time, as Eleanor had learned, did not rush for anyone. But it did something far more powerful. It revealed, it settled, it refined. Weeks passed after the transformation of Golden Crest Hotel, and with each passing day the changes became more visible. Not in grand gestures, but in quiet, meaningful ways. The lobby no longer felt like a stage, felt like a place. Staff greeted guests with genuine warmth, not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. The cleaners moved with purpose, not fear. The receptionist spoke with care, not irritation. The tension that once lived in every corner had faded into something softer, something human. And at the center of it all was balance. Eleanor stood at the entrance one morning, not in disguise this time, but in quiet observation. No announcement, no attention drawn to her presence, just watching. A habit she had not lost, and perhaps never would. She watched Sophie guide a new cleaner patiently, explaining tasks with a calm confidence that had not been there before. She watched Liam oversee maintenance with quiet efficiency. She watched the staff move, not perfectly, but honestly, and then her eyes found him. Sawyer. He stood near the entrance speaking to a guest, his posture confident now, not uncertain, not hesitant. He had grown into his role, not through authority, but through presence. Eleanor smiled softly. He had not changed, not really. He was still the same man who had offered her a chair, still the same man who had returned her wallet without hesitation, still the same man who chose kindness, even when no one was watching. The only difference now was that the world around him had finally caught up to who he already was. Their relationship had not rushed. They had both agreed on that. No sudden declarations, no impulsive decisions. Instead, they had built something. Conversation by conversation, moment by moment. They spoke often, sometimes about work, sometimes about life, sometimes about nothing at all. And in those conversations, they learned each other. Sawyer learned that Eleanor was not just strong, she was tired sometimes, human, thoughtful in ways people never saw. Eleanor learned that Sawyer was not just kind, he was resilient, quietly ambitious, deep in ways that surprised her. And slowly, carefully, the distance between them disappeared. It happened on an evening that felt ordinary. No grand setup, no dramatic moment, just the two of them standing on the rooftop of the hotel. The city stretched endlessly around them, lights glowing like stars scattered across the earth. A soft breeze moved through the air, carrying the quiet hum of life below. Eleanor leaned slightly against the railing. Sawyer stood beside her, not too close, not distant, comfortable. "You have changed this place," Sawyer said softly. Eleanor shook her head. "We have changed it." He glanced at her. "You did the hard part," he said. She smiled faintly. "No," she replied. "The hard part was finding the right people." Sawyer looked away briefly. "I'm glad I stayed," he said. Eleanor turned to him. "So am I." A quiet pause settled between them. Then Sawyer spoke again. "I have been thinking," he said. Eleanor raised an eyebrow slightly. "That sounds serious." He smiled faintly. "It is." He hesitated, then looked at her fully. I do not want this to just be something we do not talk about. Eleanor's expression softened. Neither do I. Another pause, but this one felt different. Like a step. Like something about to change. Sawyer took a breath. I care about you, he said. Simple, direct, no performance, no hesitation. Eleanor felt it, not as a surprise, but as a confirmation. I know, she said softly. He smiled slightly. And I think, he continued, it is more than that. Eleanor's heart steadied. I think so too, she said. Silence, but not empty, full. Sawyer stepped a little closer. Does that scare you? He asked. Eleanor thought about it. Honestly, yes, she said. He nodded. Me too. They both smiled. But I do not want to walk away from it, she added. Sawyer shook his head. Neither do I. And just like that, it began, not loudly, not dramatically, but truly. Their relationship grew the same way everything else had. Steady, intentional, real. They supported each other, learned each other, challenged each other. Eleanor found herself laughing more, resting more, living more. Sawyer found himself growing into spaces he had never imagined, not because of her power, but because she believed in him, and that belief mattered. Months passed. The hotel flourished. Not just financially, but culturally. Golden Crest became known not just for luxury, but for experience, for warmth, for respect. And that reputation spread. But within all that success, something even more meaningful was happening. A life was being built. The wedding was not extravagant, not by Eleanor's standards, but it was perfect because it was real. Friends gathered, family smiled, staff attended, not as employees, but as people who had witnessed the journey. Sophie stood proudly among them. Liam nodded with quiet approval. And many others whose lives had been touched by change watched with genuine happiness. Eleanor stood at the front not as a billionaire, not as an owner, but as a woman. Sawyer stood across from her, not as an employee, not as someone who had risen, but as a man, equal. As they held hands, the past felt distant. The disguise, the corruption, the fear, all of it gone. You were never just a boss to me, Sawyer said quietly. Eleanor smiled. And you were never just staff. Their vows were simple, not filled with grand promises, but grounded in truth, respect, trust, choice. And when they said yes, it was not just to each other, it was to everything they had built together. Life did not become perfect. It never does. There were still challenges, decisions, moments of uncertainty, but they faced them the same way they had faced everything else. Together. And as the sun set on their wedding day, casting a warm, golden light across the celebration, Eleanor stood beside Sawyer, not above, not ahead, beside. She looked at him, really looked, and smiled. Because in the end, she had built an empire, but more importantly, she had found something she never planned for, something she never expected, something money could never buy, love, real, steady, unshakable, and in that moment, surrounded by the people who mattered, standing in the life she had rebuilt, Eleanor Vance knew one thing for certain. This was her greatest success, and this time it was not just hers, it was theirs. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel and tell us where you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.